So let's begin with, what is nitrogen? Nitrogen is one of the many primary nutrients needed for surviving organisms. It is critical to the creation of molecules and proteins such as DNA, and makes up 80% of all Earth's resources. However, it limits primary production for organisms because it is only abundant as denitrogen, which isn't usable for people. As humans, we must transform it. Can we use nitrogen straight from the atmosphere? Unfortunately, no, we cannot. It is abundant in the atmosphere as denitrogen, which in its gas form makes organism productivity scarce. But when converted to ammonia, it produces an inorganic substance which we can then use. What's one form of nitrogen? Nitrogen fixation is the process where ammonia is created from nitrogen in the atmosphere by using small bacterial organisms. This kind of bacteria is most popularly found near plant roots of legumes. How do the bacterial organisms help the legumes? They have a special relationship in which they rely on each other for survival benefits. Bacteria is given shelter from the plant roots, while the legumes are supplied unlimited nitrogen from the bacteria. So what are the steps of the nitrogen cycle? In the following slides, we're going to be displaying different pictures, and I'll describe the different steps to each one. So in step 1, we have nitrogen-fixing bacteria takes atmospheric nitrogen and transforms it into ammonia, as you can see here. So now we have step 2 and 3 of the nitrogen cycle. Other bacteria uses this ammonia to create nitrates which contain oxygen and nitrogen. These nitrates are used by plants to make amino acids such as protein. So now we're going to continue with the steps of the nitrogen cycle. In step 4, we have plants are consumed by other organisms and the amino acids are passed on to them. And in step 5, decomposers, like mushrooms, convert the nitrogen back into ammonia and return it to the soil. As humans, we have large effects on our environment, but in specific, how do our activities affect the nitrogen cycle? Well, we perform various activities such as the burning of fossil fuels by coal and oil, which releases more nitrogen into the atmosphere. Or when we fertilize various crops with nitrogen-based fertilizers, which is then transferred into our own soil and water. And finally, on ranches and farms, when animals release waste such as ammonia into soil and water that plants will later take in. What are the harmful effects we as humans produce relative to nitrogen? In ecosystems, nitrogen can favor weeds over natural plants, which can cause species diversity and change animal relationships. Areas once seen as grasslands are now transformed into moist areas rich with flowers. We may think of this as a positive change or something new, but to the ecosystem, it changes everything. What animals can live there, what or where their resources now come from. What are the harmful effects of acid rain and high levels of nitrogen? Well, when water is combined with nitric oxide, it creates acid rain, which precipitates from the sky, corroding buildings and ruining aquatic life. It also affects air quality because high levels of nitrogen can have severe effects on people's living tissue as well as their lungs and plant production. Number 1. What is nitrogen critical to the creation of? A. Oxygen, B. Molecules and proteins, C. Carbohydrates, or D. Water? The answer is B. Molecules and proteins. Number 2. What percent of Earth's resources does nitrogen make up? A. 60%, B. 15%, C. 80%, or D. Not enough information? The answer is C. 80%. Number 3. How come animals cannot use nitrogen straight from the atmosphere? A. They aren't able to use denitrogen, which is the gas formed straight from the atmosphere. They must transform it. B. Their lungs are too small for the nitrogen. C. There is not enough nitrogen for all the animals, so there's constant competition over it. Or D. The smell of the nitrogen from the atmosphere is too strong for them. The answer is A. They aren't able to use denitrogen.